Californian, you probably know one of these people. They shop at Whole Foods, they only buy non-GMO organic products, and they bring their usable grocery bags to the store instead of buying one of the petroleum-based ones. And of course, they drive back home with all the groceries in their hybrid car. Well, people like these are globally conscious people trying to protect the environment. Naturally, we should. And they choose to buy hybrids because, as the ads portray them to be these high-tech, very environmentally friendly vehicles, naturally people want to buy them to protect the environment. But this is not true. The way they work is that as the vehicle idles or brakes, the battery converts that energy into backing up the engine for energy later. But the problem with this is that hybrids are a poor choice as an eco-friendly tool, as means of transportation, because as you go into the life cycle of the car, the manufacturing of the battery, as well as the operation of the vehicle and the disposal of the vehicle, all add up to an actually worse impact on the environment. So the first issue that we're going to go over is the need for environmentalism and the goals of it. I'm not going to try to convince you that global warming is real, but we've all seen the documentaries, right? CO2 is spiking recently as an exponential growth in hydrocarbon emissions. But with that need, as the crisis increases, we need to know that we can do something about it. The top three contributors to emissions is actually electricity generation, then transportation, and then agriculture. So they're all human-based contributing factors. So what we need to do for environmentalism is look at our conservation of energy and resources, because pollution is also a problem we're causing to the environment, while reducing our emissions. So it's not only the emissions that we're concerned about, it's also the pollution and energy consumption. So making the battery is actually a very costly procedure. The uniqueness of the materials of the battery itself is so problematic because these industries are new and they don't know what to do with these materials. So rare earth metals are used in the battery, like lithium or copper or nickel. And there was a New York Times article that said in China, where these materials are exclusively mined, basically they have a monopoly there because they don't safeguard the environmental regulations. Mining causes direct damage to the agriculture and the natural ecosystems because the companies there will remove topsoil and pollute with acids as they mine. So we need to consider that in the making of the battery. And the US Department of Energy admits that in making hybrid cars, the facilities themselves being so high-tech and new, demand more energy from the power grid, which is actually based on coal burning, because the electricity is 40% from coal burning. So even though the emissions of the car is actually a valid argument in saying that it reduces hydrocarbons, you need to look at where the power is coming from, and that actually comes from coal burning. So it's a counterintuitive process. And going over the emissions as you're driving the car, once the car is built, yes, hydrocarbons are lessened, being that Priuses get 50 miles to the gallon, whereas normal cars get 20 to 30 miles to the gallon. But there are other harmful gases produced when you drive a hybrid, being sulfate oxides. Sulfur oxides. And the US Department of Health and Services admits that 22 pounds of sulfur oxides are produced for every hybrid, whereas normal cars account for only 2.2 pounds of sulfur oxides. And that can cause acid rain as well as respiratory illness in humans. So once you've made the car, you've driven the car, and now you're left with a dead battery, and so the car is dead and you have to get rid of it. Well, the disposal of the battery also causes extreme damage to the environment. Now, companies have intended for the vehicle's batteries to be recycled, but as an environmental analyst, P.A. Kumar says, lithium, which is used in these hybrid batteries, costs 5 times more to recycle than it is to mine. So naturally, companies have no financial incentive to recycle the batteries. So they're forced to put them in landfills, as the Department of Energy admits. They become hazardous waste. And the problem with this is that these batteries contain pollutants from the rare earth metals, like cobalt. And for every hybrid made, they contain 4 pounds of cobalt in the battery, whereas normal petroleum-based cars contain no cobalt. And the problem with cobalt is that, as the U.S. Department of Health states, it stays in the environment and pollutes the water and the soil for years on end because it doesn't decompose. And that also causes respiratory illnesses in humans. And so we've gone over the manufacturing of the car, the emissions of the car, and the disposal of the car. And it all culminates into the final conclusion that maybe these cars are not as environmentally friendly as they seem. Because even though they're well-intentioned in reducing the hydrocarbons, we need to look at the overall big picture and look at the pollution that it causes by mining as well as disposal and the amount of energy that is required in building the car. So this accounts for the hybrid car consumers. Only 33% of them return to buying another hybrid after they're done with the first one. So to conclude my argument here, I'd like to say that if you want to be a part of the solution, don't necessarily buy into the big advertisements and just go out and buy a Prius. Just get your Greenpeace sticker, stick it to the bumper of your Hummer, and just be satisfied that at least you're not driving a hybrid.
All right, Karen, tell us what you thought.
Well, I thought her speech was real good, and I liked her attention because it got my attention. I do believe there were a bit too many ums. You gave really good examples. I like how you explained how the hybrids are really bad for the environment. I like your transitions, I thought they were good. I like how she talked how we could change the environment. She gave really good information. And I think she can improve on not really depending on her own stuff that much. And her conclusion was really good. It made me realize that those advertisements are good. So I think she did a really good speech.
Okay. I thought, Shay, that you did some of the same things that Tony had just done. In other words, at the start of the speech, your point of view is very clear. We know generally where you're headed. In the body of the speech, you were citing your structure, and I thought it became clearer as you were going through it how this argument was developing, but it seems like there needs to be a preview at the beginning. But just as I mentioned with Tony, the summary does a really good job of reminding us how all of this fits together. And I thought that was, it's always, you want to leave people with a particular impression. In other words, here's the last thing they're going to remember about the speech, and you go boom, boom, boom. Here are the three things, about the cars that are problematic. And I thought you did a very good job on that. I think one thing that you've done better than a lot of the other speeches that we've heard today is cite the sources. You have report from the New York Times. You cite the Department of Energy in several places. I thought that that was pretty effective at making your point. There's statistical information that shows that the amount of sulfur oxides that come from cars, that come from hybrids, are substantially greater than those that come from regular internal combustion engines. You have the factual data about the cobalt that exists in those vehicles. We could use a little bit more information about the dangers of those things in landfills and the likelihood that they're going to come out into the environment in some way or create a problem. You know, if it's lithium, it's poisonous, but if it's a landfill, what do I care? The answer is that eventually it seeps into the water table, or it gets exposed in some other way, or it vaporizes and goes up in the atmosphere. I don't know what the big risk factor is there. The fact that it's toxic, you know, lots of things are toxic, but as long as they're not coming in contact with anything that we have to worry about, that doesn't make them unsafe. And that's where I think you needed a little bit more information on those points. Otherwise, I thought you did a very good job contrasting hybrid vehicles to the traditional vehicles when it came to pollution issues. You did bury a little bit the value argument at the beginning, because it does sound like it's mostly going to be about this issue of fact. There is an argument here that, and you phrased it, I heard the propositional statement in your speech, but it doesn't come out as that's the point that you're making. This is a poor choice. There's your value claim in order to protect the environment, but you make it sound like it's just the factual comparison that you're doing. So come back to that issue, and I think maybe that would be just one of those things that you could tweak at the beginning to fix that issue. All right, thank you.